like, no, you've got food.
Good morning. Today we're on Plymouth Hoe and it's a nice day. The reason we're up here, because if you were here in 1815 in July and looked out to the Sound, you would have seen this scene. The importance of this scene, the crowds of people are here for a reason. Napoleon Bonaparte was aboard HMS Bellerophon, a 74-gun British warship, a third-rate. Brought him back from France after he surrendered to Captain Lewis Maitland, hoping to be treated well in Britain. So he came here after the defeat of Waterloo and was here for 2 weeks. During his time here, Napoleon wrote to the Prince Regent asking to be allowed to live in England. I won't go into Napoleon's military history. Safe to say that he was one of the most brilliant military minds of all time. His victories, out of 50 battles, he won 47. The man was adored by his troops. Every time he came back from defeat, he was cheered by the crowds and soldiers flocked to him. And he loved his soldiers. He was the last man to go to bed at night and the first man to wake up. He arranged everything from food supplies, horses, shoes, even the shoes and hospitalization. He arranged this for every unit in his army, every army corps during his time. And this gave him such a following in France that every time he came to the fore, he was adored and people flocked to his colours. He was able to raise armies after armies, hundreds of thousands of men. 500,000 men marched into Russia with him, and only 10% came out. 60,000 men survived. Some just disappeared, others were defeated, others died in the snows in Russia. He came back again from exile in 1815, tried to raise another army. He did, he raised another army successfully. He wanted peace with Russia and Britain. They didn't want any of it. They declared him an outlaw and sent soldiers into France. Russians, Prussians, British. They met at Waterloo. Napoleon got a jump on them. He marched in between the Prussians, hoping to separate the Prussians from the British. This happened just before the Battle of Waterloo at Ligny and Quatre Bras. He fought 2 battles there. Both sides, the Prussians and the British, retreated to Waterloo. Then the disastrous Battle of Waterloo. He lost. He came back to Paris, tried to raise another army, but the Senate was against him. So he decided to leave. He thought he'd go to America, where he had a lot of friends, and took a boat, but his Joseph Fouquet, who was his chief of police, informed the Allies, the British, who were blockading Rochefort, that Napoleon was trying to get out of France. So they were ready for him. Napoleon got to the Isle of Ash, just off Rochefort, but with the British warships out in the sea, he couldn't go any further. So he thought England perhaps would take pity on him, and it wouldn't be such a bad place to live. So he surrendered to Captain Maitland on board HMS Bellerophon. He was brought to Tor Bay for a couple of days where people weren't allowed to go on board ship, and then he came into Plymouth. This ship arrived in Plymouth on the 26th of July. The people in Plymouth and England in general, they had sympathy for Napoleon. Although he was the ogre of Europe throughout the Napoleonic Wars and he caused much death and destruction, the average person adored Napoleon. As you can see by this picture, people came from all over Britain to see Napoleon in Plymouth. And it said there on this plaque that at one day there was 8,000 people around the Bellerophon trying to get a glimpse of Napoleon. He would come out every day on the back of the ship, just stood there and watched the people adore it. He must have thought, why did these people ever fight me?
Is this him here?
That's him. The lieutenant, well, the little lieutenant. He started off as a lieutenant, ended up as Emperor of France. He actually crowned himself Emperor in 1804 of France. He put the crown on his own head. Although he was a bit of a megalomaniac and was adored by people, I think he thought too much that his how can I say it? He was invincible. Wherever he went, he had victories under his belt. Even in the jaws of defeat, at Lutzen in just before he was exiled, before Waterloo the first time, after he retreated from Moscow, he came back to Paris. He raised a fresh army of 200,000 men to take on the Allies. He won 3 victories, 3 battles, before being trapped in Leipzig and forced to withdraw. But they surrounded him in Leipzig, but he got out. He actually pulled out.
So Phil,
Yes.
why was he in Plymouth? Why did he come to Plymouth? And how long was he here?
From July 26th to August the 4th, he was brought to Plymouth because he surrendered to Maitland, and the Bellerophon went into Torbay and then came down to Plymouth because it was on the Atlantic side. So this was the nearest port. To go all the way to London, you don't know what might have happened. There would have been thousands and thousands of people in London crowding, because some people, they said, came from London to see him here. He was so popular. He was here for 2 weeks while the government decided what to do with him. He wasn't allowed to come ashore.
Why not?
Because look at the reception he would have got. He would have been mobbed. And the British government were still worried that he had a lot of support. Even in this country, people love Bonaparte. You know?
Would the British legal system have helped him had he set foot on land?
Don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think they would have gone against the government anyway, because it was well thought out. They didn't want Napoleon here because it would have made him a martyr. He wanted to live in Britain. He asked the Prince Regent, he wrote to Prince Regent asking permission to retire in Britain. But the decision what to do with Napoleon was actually decided at a house in Plymouth. Well, it wasn't decided, it was decided in London, the Admiralty, and it was sent to the letter, the instructions of what to do with Napoleon was sent to a Belair house in Plymouth.
Whereabouts in Plymouth was that, Phil?
Peveril. It's where Belair Road and Elphinstone Avenue meet at Peveril. There it was decided by Lord Keith and 2 other officers, high-ranking officers, to open these instructions, and that's what they were told to do, was to get rid of him, take him away to exile, St. Helena,
So Phil,
right out in the Atlantic.
when he was here,
Yes.
what would have been the scene out here, do you
Well,
think?
you've seen the picture.
Describe it to me, Phil.
Hundreds and hundreds of little boats coming out from all parts of the shore just to catch a glimpse of Napoleon. He never spoke to anyone. I mean, he had a routine on board ship, but he never spoke. He just stood there and he must have thought, well, all these people love me. Where did I go wrong?
I guess it must have been an income for local people selling
Boatmen.
boat trips.
Yes, yeah.
So-
People always make money.
So today we've got dockyard and warship, and in the day we had Napoleon.
Yes, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Where did he go after he left here then?
He was taken out and he was transferred to another ship called HMS Northumberland and taken off to, he went to Torbay for a couple of days first and then went out on HMS Northumberland and then was transferred to St. Helena, right out in the Atlantic, where he could not escape.
Now I believe there's a link between the vessel he was on here and Plymstock.
Yes, I'll talk about that a bit later on the next part, if you like. Keep you enthralled.
So it's a lovely day on the Hoe today,
It is
isn't
today.
it?
It's like a mill pond out there.
I wonder what Napoleon would have thought of it here.
I think he was quite amazed at the amount of support he had from people. He's probably sat on that boat thinking, these people, why did I ever fight them?
Because,
But he did.
Because the conception is, we hated him.
No, he was. Don't forget, he was born into the Republic when just after the French Revolution, he came to power. Then he started off as a lieutenant like I said, in 1793. There was still a lot of royalists in France, and the revolution was still going on in the Vendée and the south coast. Toulon for a start. The British helped the royalists. We sent ships over to help. Admiral Hood, I believe it was. But Napoleon actually planned the counterattack and pushed the royalists out of Toulon. That was his first victory. So he was born in revolution. But his ideas for Europe, if you like, he wanted the first common market in Europe. He wanted all these nations to be one. Same currency, same, like the common market. But it just didn't work. Yeah, but don't forget, Europe was ruled by kings and princes, and they did not want revolution. They did not want this, and they saw Napoleon as a revolutionary.
So
he had some revolutionary ideas, actually.
So I think we're heading somewhere else now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to have a look at the cemetery, because there was an interesting reason. So
And where is that, Phil?
down at Stoke Damrell.
We'll see you there.
See you there.